I want to first of all thank Amanda for planning a service that's already touched my heart today. Got a little bit of echo in there, and I feel like there's a spirit here already that is just allows me to speak and hopefully offer some of the words that God is blessing us with. Well, good morning. We're in the middle Sunday of August, and to me it seems like the summer's flying by. I don't know how it seems to you. It just seems like it was yesterday that I went to World Conference, and that was early June. And then I went to Reunion. That's our family camp at Camp Bountiful. And now school's starting. The news is all about Ohio State football. In a couple of weeks, we're going to play number 1 Texas. And it seems like things just keep going on. But I hope that you've had a good time this summer, a time with your family and friends and church friends. I hope that you had an opportunity to visit with them. For me, it's been a time of refreshment and renewal. I recently sent an email, and in it I said, I am more hopeful. I'm more hopeful, especially after my experiences at World Conference and also at Reunion. It just seemed like hope filled the air there. Our theme at World Conference was Hope is Here, and through a number of activities and legislation, there really was a spirit of hope present there. Also, this morning, did you notice in Amanda's words and in Lisa's words, the word hope? It seems to be a key thing there. I wish all of you could have been also at World Conference so that you could have been a part of, that hopeful experience there. The first woman, was ordained to be prophet and president of the church, Stacy Cram, and that carried a lot of hope with it. She's gifted to move the church forward. She uses the word onward. You'll see that a lot. She uses it repeatedly, and she does have a strong vision to lead the church into God's preferred future. We ordained 3 international persons to important leadership positions. Bunda Chibwe, as a counselor to the president, he's a major leader in the church in Africa, and he's now a counselor. Richard James from Wales in the United Kingdom, he's the president of the Council of 12 Apostles. And Mareva Arnold Chong is the presiding evangelist. That's the order that I'm a part of, and she's from French Polynesia. We really are a worldwide church, and the diversity of nationalities and cultures was inspiring to experience. The theme for Reunion this year followed on that from World Conference, and it was Choose Hope. Choose hope. Again, there's that word. I hope you'll feel that today. In a divided world that we live in today, with war and hunger and so many other challenges, even here in our home country, we need to find hope to be able to go on. This fall, we're going to study the Reunion text called Choose Hope, and I hope that you will join us in that class. It starts the second week of September. One of the main points in here is that Christian hope is not the same as wishful thinking or wanting everything to turn out okay, which is kind of what we tend to think about hope. I hope this will happen or whatever. It goes much deeper than that. Christian hope is a force of God, a movement of the Spirit in our lives. It can strengthen us to be more resilient and not lose our faith when tough times come. I hope that you will join us to learn more and experience more Christian hope if you're able to come to our church school class. I wanted to spend a little bit of extra time today just to talk about hope in starting out, Christian hope, and its emphasis in the church right now, because one of the very first steps, and we'll find that out in the book, is that hope is one of the first steps is to journey into our past, remembering those that have gone before us. Our faith ancestors, our faith ancestors. Their witness, it can instruct us and it can encourage us. Their experience and their wisdom is a place where hope begins as we recall their stories of faith. Our scripture today and our theme focuses exactly on the faith of our fathers and mothers, and we do well to remember it. It can strengthen our hope. Our scripture for today begins in Hebrews, the 11th chapter. Hebrews 11 is sometimes called the Hall of Faith. The Hall of Faith. Kind of a take on the words Hall of Fame. It's when a Hall of Fame is when we honor individuals for their achievements in a given field. I think of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland that honors rock music artists. I don't know if you've been there. I have made it there once. That was exciting. Or maybe the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton. As much as I like football, I've never been there. The Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11 honors the giants of faith, especially in Jewish history, mostly from the Old Testament. These are persons that we can look to strengthen our faith. Darren Lilly spoke about some of these models of faith last week. What I thought was a wonderful message. Amanda said she's never remembered somebody to get clapped, have clapping afterwards, but it was really a wonderful message. He talked about Abraham and he talked about Sarah, who were seeking a homeland. And I'd like to just pick up there and maybe reread some of what he read. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he set out not knowing where he was going. And it goes on to say, for he looked forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Can you imagine the adventure of that? But also the risk and the uncertainty. Led by God through faith to look for a city whose architect and builder is God. Abraham's son, his great-grandson and great-grandson, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, all are mentioned in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. And of course, Moses is in the Hall of Faith. He wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. He faced the Pharaoh of Egypt and led the Egyptians out of Egypt after 400 years of slavery. I'd like to read just a little bit, a short version of that history that's in Hebrews 11. By faith, this is Hebrews 11, starting with the 23rd verse. By faith, Moses was hidden by his parents for 3 months after his birth, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called a son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to share ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered abuse, suffered for the Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to the reward. By faith he left Egypt unafraid of the king's anger, for he persevered as though he saw him who is invisible. What a great example Moses is for us today. Wouldn't it be great if we had leaders who considered abuse suffered for the Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, or maybe we would say the treasures of the United States. And they persevered because they had a personal relationship with God, like Moses. As it says there, they would persevere as though they saw God who is invisible. We know of Moses' strong relationship with God. Wouldn't it be great to have such leaders? In the Hall of Faith, there's so many good names. One that I've been really taken to lately was a woman by the name of Rahab. I wish I had time this morning to go through her story a little bit, but it said that she was a prostitute, and yet because she was open to the people, the spies as they came in before coming into the promised land after 40 years in the wilderness, they were the first to come in, and she entertained them and gave them hospitality. And because of that, she was saved. What really strikes me is that Rahab, a very unknown person at first, became the great-grandmother of the greatest King David in Jewish history, and had a son who understood what it meant to be marginalized. And that son married Ruth, an immigrant woman, who was the great-grandmother of King David. And of course, we talk about that Jesus was the house of David. Wonderful people in the Hall of Faith, and some of those mentioned in Hebrews 11. There's just so many examples there. And I'd like to, and then the section ends in the first two verses of Hebrews, the 12th chapter. And let me read that. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that's set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Of course, the great example of faith is Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross for the sake of the world and for our sake even today. There's so much that we can learn from Jesus and experience with his presence even today. So Hebrews 11 talks about a cloud of witnesses, and Joe mentioned this before. And our theme today is clouds of witnesses surround us. Can you imagine our faith ancestors in the Hall of Fame gathered, if you will, in a kind of a heavenly cloud to encourage us, to strengthen us by their presence? And though this may not be literally true, or maybe it is, in any case, we can read of their wisdom and we can feel their presence with us and be strengthened in our work for the Lord. Or perhaps those in the Hall of Faith are cheering us from the bleachers to run with perseverance the race that is set before us, to give us hope in these challenging times. For the remainder of my message today, I'd like to mention three others that are in my mind are in the Hall of Faith. The first is from ancient times that we learn about from a book from the Americas, and the other two are a couple from our congregation from the past when we were Columbus South. Their influence still lives on in our congregation, and I'd like to share a testimony of their influence in my life. Upon my heart lately has been the story of King Benjamin. It's recorded in a book from the Americas, in the book of Mosiah, and I learned of this story in Sunday school, and it was one that my mother taught me, and because of the great faith of this King Benjamin and the wisdom that he shared. The story takes place in the land of Zarahemla, some of the years before Christ visited the earth. Benjamin was a wise and righteous leader who was loved by the people. When he succeeded his father as king, he dedicated himself completely to the task of freeing the people from the bondage of war and injustices. Along with other holy people in the land, he spoke out for God clearly and forcefully. The part of the story that I recall happened near the end of his life. When he was old, he wanted to deliver a farewell speech to the people. He would share with them that his son Mosiah would be their next king. He would share with them much wisdom. The people came from all over the land and gathered near the temple, and they placed their tents so that the doors faced the temple. And in this depiction here, you see that large tower there in the temple. It was built especially for this purpose. King Benjamin spoke from a tower so that the people could hear him. And he counseled the people to love and serve each other. He reminded them that living for each other brings true happiness. There's several parts of his speech that really speak to me today. First of all, that all people are equal. He reminded the people that they were created of the dust of the earth, which, and I'm quoting him, belongs to him who created you. And I, even I, whom you call your king, am no better than you yourselves are, for I am also of the dust. The dust of the earth, which belongs to him who created you. And I, even I, whom you call your king, am no better than you yourselves, for I am also of the dust. Second, a righteous king does not seek for personal riches. Striving for riches often separates people from each other, he said. Benjamin did not want separation between himself and his people. And the part of the speech that my mother always quoted and talked about was that service to others is service to God. And let me read it here. It's from the book of Mosiah. Behold, because I said to you that I had spent my days in your service, I did not desire to boast, for I have only been in the service of God. And behold, I tell you these things that you may learn wisdom, that you may learn that when you're in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. And I emphasize that when you are in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. My mother often quoted that. And I hear an echo of the words of Jesus. Just as you've done it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. As I remember the story of King Benjamin, I'm encouraged and my hope is strengthened by this man of great faith who could well be recognized in the Hall of Faith. He's one of those in the cloud of witnesses that testify through the way they live their lives of the love of God. The last two that I would like to consider in the Hall of Faith are Robert and Lucinda Madden. We called him Bob, by the way. They're a couple from our congregation when we were in Columbus South, in the south end of Columbus, east of Parsons Avenue. Their influence still lives in the congregation. I'd like to share my testimony of their influence in my life. I can thank Jim Cummings for the information that I'm sharing today. He wrote a tribute to Bob and Lucinda that's in our history archives and the ones we have for our congregation, and we can thank Jim for that. Here's a picture of Bob and Lucinda. Have you seen it back in the office there? It's taken from a memorial, here is at Restoration Plaza, and a picture, again, that you might have seen here in the office. Lucinda was born in 1899. My goodness, that's a long time ago. To August and Rosa Neiman, who mortgaged their home to finance the church building. That's how committed her family was. For that church building was in the south end of Columbus, just east of Parsons Avenue. And that's where we met until we moved here in 1997. Oh, you know that we were in a school for a couple of years as we built this building, and that's where we met Connie Yeri, and we're glad that we were able for her to be a part. Lucinda was an attorney when there were very few women in this profession. She put herself through school. I don't think her father was willing to put her through school back in the 1920s. She passed the bar in 1929, and she practiced until her death in 1992, 63 years. she practiced. I remember she'd take the bus in those last years out of Bexley where they lived in the home that Bernie bought from them, and she would take that downtown each day. I hear at one point that she was on a first name basis with the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. Bob grew up in Columbus and attended Ohio State, and I'm proud to say he studied electrical engineering, which is my field. As a professional engineer, he worked at the Jeffrey Manufacturing Company, and his most well-known project involved the construction of the Hoover Dam. So that's something he was involved with. They believed in service to others, especially in youth work for them earlier on, youth work within the church. They were the youth leaders for many programs in sports leagues. What was it? She was the coach of our basketball team, women's basketball team. Bob especially was in bowling, and we know that Bob bowled 300 at least once in his life. They were involved in camping, and Lucinda, especially in Sunday school, she taught Sunday school for over 60 years. Anybody here in her Sunday school class? There's Susie and Joe, and there's Ginger in her Sunday school class. It might have gotten a little more difficult in later years, but she had such dedication to that. They were recipients, Bob and Lucinda, of the Community of Christ International Youth Service Award, which is given at World Conference every year. And in 1975, the board of the Camp Bountiful Association recognized Bob and Lucinda for their contributions to Camp Bountiful. Bob, of all things, won the contest to design the Camp Bountiful logo, and I had forgotten about that. Their service record goes on, and the picture that I show here is from a monument at Restoration Plaza, which is our former senior housing in Northeast Columbus, our Section 8 housing that we had. Lucinda happened to be the first president of the board of Restoration Plaza. Bob served as pastor for 14 years back in the 1930s and 1940s. That's a long time ago. But what impressed me about him is that he showed his faithfulness to God and to the church, and it was shown by some of the numbers that were a measure of his priesthood activity. As a priesthood member, Bob, as an engineer, you can imagine, kept meticulous records. And over his 50-plus years that he served in the priesthood, here's some of the services that he performed. He preached 493 sermons. He baptized 88 people. He blessed 116 babies. Amy blessed her first last week. You have 115 to go. It's not a competition. But he performed 103 confirmations, officiated 83 weddings and 84 funerals, made more than 4,000 priesthood visits, and performed almost 2,000 prayers for the healing of the sick. Amazing, just amazing for all those years. I got to know Bob and Lucinda and to witness their strong faith when I moved back to Columbus from teaching in Cleveland in 1980. By that time, Bob was in a wheelchair. He was suffering from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and it would eventually take his life. He was actively serving, though, but he was very humbled, because the main entrance to our church was at the basement level where we had Sunday school, and it took several strong men each week to lift him in his wheelchair, and I can still picture it, up 2 long flights of stairs to the sanctuary where he still was preaching from time to time. It humbled him and it embarrassed him, I think, every time, but he was willing to stay engaged and to continue his ministry. I especially remember that it touches my heart when the Lord was working me as I considered a call to work in the impoverished neighborhood around the church. Bob was preaching one of those last of those 493 sermons. The theme was from Mosiah, from the story of King Benjamin, from his farewell message to his people that I spoke of this morning. And when I heard the words of King Benjamin, I knew that they were meant for me. From Mosiah. Also, you yourselves will succor those that stand in need of your succor. You will administer of your substance to him that stand in need, and you will not suffer that the beggar will put up his petition to you in vain and turn him out to perish. For behold, are we not all beggars? Do we not all depend upon the same God, same being, even God, for all the substance which we have, for both food and raiment, and for gold and for silver, and the riches which we have of every kind? For behold, are we not all beggars that depend upon the same being, even God? And so it was that after church that day, when a hungry woman walked into the church and asked for food, I was convicted that when you're in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. And I took Viola to a Kroger in the area and bought her food for the week, and that started a long-term relationship that blessed us both. And that still touches me today. Recently, and I'll say this in closing, Pastor Ruth emailed some notes listing our outreach efforts here in the congregation. I added a couple to the list, and here they are. And excuse me, please, if I've missed some. I'm sure that there are some that perhaps I've missed there. Darby Woods Elementary, giving school supplies for teachers. Ronald McDonald House, the MASH Pantry, Helping Hands Food Pantry over on 3C Highway. Grove City, Lend a Helping Hand, that helps those who cannot upgrade their housing to code in Grove City. The Fifth Sunday organizations, the fifth Sunday of this month will be helping with Kids Hope, is that what it's called? Kids Hope. And last fifth Sunday we did Little Bottoms, as I recall, trying to help our community. Meals on Wheels, some of you are involved in. Treats for the Streets we're looking into. Bread, Organization for Justice. Tarpon Springs Congregation, we give considerable funds each year to help their program with the homeless in Florida. And I say etc. I'm sure I'm not aware of all. In closing, I'd like to encourage you personally, because I'm so pleased that we are involved in so many worthwhile endeavors. And as Ruth said, I hope that you will put some of those in the announcements that Lois prepares every week, to let us know how we have served. You're responding to the inspired words of King Benjamin. When you're in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. You're bringing the work of peace and justice to the cities of Grove City and Columbus and even Tarpon Springs, Florida. Can you sense the presence of the cloud of witnesses that surround us? Abraham and Sarah, Moses, King Benjamin, Bob and Lucinda Madden, and of course Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, encouraging you in your service, providing you strength and wisdom, and especially giving you hope, true hope, Christian hope for the days ahead. My prayer in closing is that may you be blessed as you are in the service of your brothers and sisters. You will only be in the service of your God. Amen.